Hey, what's going on? Thank you for your interest in the call reluctance training. And if you are here watching this, one favor that I ask is that you watch the training, but you don't just watch it and don't take anything from it. I want you to watch the training, implement what the training is about, take the strategies, take the mindset that is taught in this training and apply it to your business, because knowledge without action is basically irrelevant, right? So take action on what you learn here. And again, just thank you so much for your interest in this. This is a huge piece to growing your business, is getting beyond call reluctance. We talk a little bit about other types of reluctance, even content reluctance, and just doing the actions that are hard and scary, and having the right mindset around why we're making those actions. So again, enjoy this training. Have a great day.
So this is a really good group. Actually, this may be the busiest class we've had in a long time, and I appreciate everybody being here. Luke, when you get started, and then just turn it over when you're ready. So
yeah, no, I mean, so we were talking last week about this topic of call reluctance, and I know we kind of brought in here, but I'm over here going to point out a spelling error, but I'll just avoid it.
Oh yeah, that's me. Yeah.
No, but yeah, we were talking about this sort of this concept, and it just so happened to be I'd been on a Rene Rodriguez training, and one of the things that we had talked about on that training was call reluctance and why call reluctance happens. And one of the biggest reasons why call reluctance happened in that situation was because there was not a specific process, or they didn't know what to say when they were talking to realtors, and like, what is the value add that they have for realtors. So we kind of were like, hey, let's figure out a way that we can talk about this in a way that, maybe helps you come up with some ideas as to what is the value that you do provide. And I'll let Enrique go, because I know you had your stuff in here as well, but that's kind of like why we had this training, especially in a market like we're in today. So anyway.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we have some people also that are not necessarily part of the group, or that are here every week. So obviously, Luke, with Loans on Demand, I am actually, excited to be invited to these things every week, and just bring knowledge and some of my practical wisdom and advice. This is my 20th year as a mortgage originator, 14 as an owner broker, and and I love what I do. I love working with mortgages, and to this day, even though I'm doing a lot of different things, my main purpose, what I do every single day, is originate loans. I wake up every day with the same problems that you guys have. I wake up thinking, okay, I need applications, and I talk to underwriters, and I deal with appraisal shortages, and I deal with DTI issues and credit problems. So I am in the trenches with you guys, originating every single day. So everything I bring to you is not just knowledge that I have secondhand or third hand. Today we're going to talk about call reluctance, and actually, it's a very hot topic, because what we're finding out is that for the last 2.5 years, well, it's been a while now, maybe 7-8 months, but prior to 7-8 months ago, we didn't really have to worry a lot about calling people, right? People were calling us. I joke about the fact that I would wear mortgage shirts on purpose to go to the car wash and to go to the grocery store, because people would come in and ask me questions about mortgages, and I would walk out of there with refis. I go to the car wash, and I would be sitting there, and people like, hey, so what are the rates doing? I was like, that's funny you ask, right? 2%. And I would walk out of there with a refi. Well, those days are over, right? So we are finding out that it's taken people almost 7, 10, 12 months for some people to figure out that this is not going to kind of change rapidly overnight. And I need to learn how to pick up the phone, and I need to learn how to, and a lot of people are finding out, because they're 2, 3, 4 years in the business, that they are victims of call reluctance or reluctance in general, and they didn't even know they had this problem. And it's real, and it's affecting everybody. The proof of it is that Luke just went over there to Facebook, put a little post saying, hey, there's going to be the, and people immediately started signing up for this thing like an hour ago, because people want to know, okay, well, how do I do this? People need to understand. Now, I love Rene Rodriguez, and I'm going to tell you, I'm never, ever going to tell you that what he's saying is wrong. He focuses on let's learn what to say, and let's learn how to approach that, and therefore call reluctance will go away. I'm a firm believer that there's more to it, and I'm pretty sure he would agree with this, and that is, a lot of reasons why people struggle with reluctance in their lives is not necessarily because they may not necessarily know what to say. They probably don't know why they even struggle with co-reluctance. We're clueless about it because it's something that is psychological, that is deeply rooted within us. And today I'm actually going to go down the rabbit hole with you a little bit. And this is not necessarily stuff that I came up with, but this is stuff that it is proven. And I've been spending quite a bit of time putting this presentation together. I'm actually presenting at another group later. So I've been working on it for a while, but this is something that people are baffled, right? These are people who go, I'm a good salesman, I have good scripts, I have a good product, and then nothing happens, right? Luke and Marissa will be the first ones to tell you. They interview people, they become subscribers, they become members of Loans on Demand, and they got all the tools, right? The scripts are there, the calls are there, the leads are there, and then something just paralyzes people, right? And it paralyzes people to the extent to where they go, oh, I don't know what to say. And then they're trying to figure it out. And it can be very frustrating. It can be frustrating for the person that is experiencing it, but it's also frustrating for people who are associated with you. So in this case, it's like, you'll have Marissa going like, well, why are you not making your calls? Why are you not calling your leads, right? And the person like, well, because I don't have time and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And you know very well that that's not really the case. And Marissa knows that's not the case, but yet it just creates frustration. So today we're going to actually spend a little bit of time talking about what are some of those things, right? If anybody has questions, just throw them in the chat. I'm going to ask Luke to keep an eye on it because I usually don't. And I usually don't look at them. So obviously reluctance is the enemy. Reluctance is the enemy of wealth. Reluctance is the enemy of success. Reluctance is the enemy of leveling up. This is actually factual information. You look at some of the people that do really, really well in our business, not everybody, but a big majority of them, they don't struggle with this. Some of the reluctance we're going to talk about today: call reluctance, action reluctance, engagement reluctance, making content reluctance. It all goes into the same enchilada. We're going to focus mostly on call reluctance because this is something that we struggle with. Now, what's call reluctance? Well, calling realtors, calling the prospects, calling the leads, following up, cold calling. Would leads that are coming in from Loans on Demand be considered cold calling, Luke? Would you consider that cold calling?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily. It's cold, but it's it's not a referral. All right, it's a different sort of lead, right? But I do
people
think that
struggle with those calls. Yeah, people struggle.
And it comes to all of those things, right? Following up for docs, right? Hey, if someone hasn't sent docs back, like, all right, how many times are you following up with them then?
Right.
And I don't know if it's ignorance or if it's call reluctance in some cases. But yeah,
So the focus today is going to be on making phone calls where we feel like we're going to have to ask for business. So this is sort of like one of the big paralysis, right? When I have to call a realtor, when I have to call the prospect, or, not like, hey, call my sister, she wants a loan. That's an easy phone call to make somehow. But calling maybe a lead that came through the internet, maybe a lead that was provided to us through Loans on Demand, those are the things that we're struggling with. There's a common denominator with high performance loan officers nationwide. I was at a conference last week with some of the top guys. I was on Zoom and some of them were in person. And man, let me tell you, they were all talking about making calls. These are people who are in the top of their game, and every single week, 2 to 3 hours a week, are making calls, right? And they don't have to, but they make the calls, right? Some of the top guys, regardless of background, education, experience, broker, retail, and it doesn't matter. Most of them have the ability to overcome reluctance because they found a formula to do this. It's not that they have a better script. You guys familiar with Luke, Jeremy, what is Jeremy Fournier? Is that how you say his last name? Jeremy Fournier. Top guy, top guy. He's a top guy. And he goes on to talk about how does he make these calls? And I'm like, okay, I better I'm going to write down my notepad because he's going to give us this famous script. And the script was like, hey, what's up? Just calling, say hi, how things going? He's got this good script, but it's like, where's the script? Where's the magic bullet? The magic bullet is not the script. The magic bullet is the fact that he's actually making the calls. He's making 20, 30, 40 phone calls constantly. So it's not the script. He's just calling people, right? And he somehow figured out that that he can do this. Reluctance is the killer of dreams. It's fertile ground for mediocre performance. Reluctance, especially called reluctance, is a simple but powerful instinctive reaction to something that is not real, but has a stronghold on loan officers. So let's break this down for a second. The reason why you have reluctance is not real. It's not real. It's something in our head. Some people call it the little guy here on the shoulder telling you, no, go check your email, go to lunch and then call later, or let's do this first, order that appraisal. And then when you come back, then you make your calls. It's a powerful reaction to something. We're going to talk about what that something is. Now, it's going to sound a little different, a little weird, what I'm going to tell you, but it traces back to an instinct that we have. So some of you may or may not agree with this, but all of us have instincts, things that drive us, things that motivate us, things that make us who we are. And they are things that are so deep ingrained in us as human beings. Now, some of them are because of the way we grew up. You know, I got a chance to spend time with Luke, and we talked a little bit about who we are as people, you know, and how he grew up and how I grew up and what he does and what I do. And we have some common denominators, but some of our reactions are different because we were brought about different. But there are certain things that are the same because we just both of us happen to be human beings. Both of us happen to be human beings, so we experience some of the same instinctual pushes that we have, some buttons that we have that come from our instincts. And we know that because we see it time and time again. So we're going to talk about the main one today, and that is fear. Fear. This is the big one, right? So going back, it's a stronghold that we have as loan officers, as people. It's a stronghold that we have that is keeping us from moving forward. It's fear. There's common variations of fear. We're going to focus on a few of them today. This is important to know. This is probably the big part of the presentation because understanding this is going to give us a much better understanding how to overcome certain things. So one of the fears that we have is the fear of the unknown. This is something that every person in this call has. Every one of us is afraid of the unknown. Not one person is not. The rest of them, we have different levels, right? Some of them are more afraid than others, but we all suffer from some of these. Fear of ridicule or embarrassment. Fear of pain or discomfort. That's a big one. Fear of what others think of us. Fear of failing. Part of the reason why call reluctance is so prevalent is because it's one of the activities that actually touches all of those. Call reluctance is the result of fear of the unknown, fear of embarrassment, fear of discomfort, fear of what are they going to say? What are they going to think? What if? The problem is that all of that happens very quickly in the back of our minds and is not a conscious thing that we're thinking. We just know that we're going to go to lunch first and then we're going to make our calls later. We just know that, oh man, you know what? It's raining outside, so I better go check to see if the windows of the car are closed. And then on the way back, that's a reaction that we have to, that's the fear, is the fear of all those things, but it happens fast and it happens in the back of our brains and it happens really, really fast. And we move really quickly past it. And then we don't make the calls and then the fear subsides because now I don't have to, it's already 4:30, no one's going to pick up the phone. So I feel better because now I don't have to make the calls. I don't have to do this, or I don't have to do what I said I was going to do. I'm using a lot of what I'm saying is about calls, but it's really not necessarily just about calls. It's about whatever it is that you decided that you wanted to do. So if you think about this, it's so instinctual. You know, think of a little kid. Think of your child when they're 3 or 4, and you take them somewhere, and there's people. And the vast majority of the kids, and you say, hey, go over there or go say hi. And they're paralyzed. Like they don't want to, and you're like, you're only 4 years old. How can you why are you embarrassed? Why are you afraid? It's the instinct. Something's telling that kid, wait a minute. I don't know what's going on. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to get hurt. They're going to make fun of me. I don't know what goes in our heads, but it's like we're paralyzed and we don't want to take the action. So think of that little kid, your son, your daughter, or yourself when you were that age. And now fast forward 30, 40 years later, And here we are with the same instinct. That instinct is still there. Now, I'm going to make a parenthesis. A lot of the things that instinctually we deal with, the fears, the things that we deal with are there for a reason, right? And I was talking to Cesar, who's here on the call. I was talking to him about an hour ago, and I said, a lot of those things were put into us when we needed them to make sure that a lion didn't eat us, to make sure that we didn't fall off a cliff, to make sure that we didn't get killed going out when we were out gathering things, right? All those instincts were put in there for that reason. So here we are, thousands of years later, same human being, same instinct, different circumstances. We no longer have to worry about the lion and the bear and the tiger, oh my, whatever, right? We don't have to worry about those things. We don't have to worry about dying every time that we do anything. But what do we do with those instincts? Well, the instinct is going to find a way to act. So instead of being out there, killing animals or gathering or hunting or doing whatever, now we're over here sitting here dealing with mortgages and dealing with leads and dealing with realtors. Same instincts are going to do the same things. Self-protection. So I know for a lot of you are thinking, well, this is a stretch, but it really isn't. It's the same feeling. Dealing with a realtor or going out and doing something you have to do 10,000 years ago, same feeling of, I don't want to do this, because we need to protect ourselves against the unknown, against embarrassment, against discomfort and pain, and what other people think, and the fear. That's the reason why when I'm coaching people and I say, well, what happened with the calls? So I don't know, man, I just can't get to it. What do you mean? I just can't get to it. I'm too busy, and this happened, and that happened, and this happened, and that happened. And I know very well that's not the case, because this guy was not doing this 50 hours a week. There was time to make the calls. It's just the reluctance kicks in. Now, I'm spending time on this, but it's important to understand this because we all struggle with this. And you can't overcome something you don't understand. You need to understand that this is something that's way deep in there. So here's the important idea of the day. Fear has a role in your life. It was put in there thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. It is there to organize defensive behavior when pain is coming. So you're standing there, pain is coming, fear kicks in, and helps you organize your defensive mechanism. It's that simple. So if you're standing there and out comes a pit bull that just got loose and it's coming at you, and it's going to bite you and hurt, fear kicks in immediately, and your brain starts organizing. Okay, how do I get defensive here? Where do I jump? Where do I go? What do I do? That's an easy one to understand, right? It's an instinct. You don't sit there and go, well, I should look for, let me see if I can Google how to avoid a bite from a dog. You don't have time. You're going to have to just act, and your instinct will help you. So fear is there for a reason. It's to organize that defensive behavior when you know the pain is coming. When you're able to identify the pain is coming. Here's the problem. It's time to make calls. Let me tell you what your brain says. Pain is coming. Really? Pain? Yeah. It's painful to make calls. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. I don't want to. Pain's coming. Fear kicks in. Organize. Let's go do something else. Let's come up with some BS excuse why we're not going to make that. It's the exact same thing as when the pit bull's coming. Exact same thing. It just happens under different circumstances. So the role of that fear is to get you organized quickly, fast, really quickly, put you in a defensive mode because pain is coming, and then you start acting, you create a behavior that is going to keep you away from that pain. Any questions so far? Everybody with me? So here's the thing. Fear is not the enemy, because fear is a mechanism that is ingrained in you. A lot of people talk about get rid of fear. Can't get rid of fear, man. Fear is there. And you know it. When you're afraid of something, you're afraid of something. Now, you can overcome by doing things in spite of the fear, but you cannot turn this off.
Well, and fear is actually healthy, because what fear
is telling us is that we're doing something that's uncomfortable or doing something that doesn't like, because if we're comfortable, that means we're probably in a position, that's not stretching us and not making us
That
grow.
is exactly right. So the problem is that a lot of people that are teaching this, a lot of people that are talking about overcoming the fear, they're saying, well, you got to get rid of it. And, study after study, you can read it. Every psychologist, every sociologist, every person that studies this tells you, you can mask it, you can ignore it, you can be in denial about it, but the fear is going to still be there. It's a mechanism that is there for a reason. It's a primal mechanism. And like Luke said, it's actually a healthy one. This is the one that sort of tells you, hey, watch out, something wrong is coming. It is basically there to help you figure out how to defend yourself when pain is imminent. So the goal is really not to overcome fear. Really is to disengage the reaction to the fear. So pain is coming, you're going to have a reaction, you have to disengage that. That's the key here, because the fear is still going to be there. You just have to disengage the reaction. So let's use the example of the dog, right? So you're standing there, the dog is coming, you know that dog is coming, you're still going to be afraid, but you may say to yourself, okay, don't move. You can still do it, don't move. So you consciously say to yourself, well, I'm not going to engage on my instinctive reaction, which is jump up, because if I jump, there's a cliff and I'm going to get killed. So rapidly you have to evaluate that it's better to get bit than to jump. And people have to make those decisions about life and death all the time. Like when you're driving, something happens, you go, man, why did he react this way? Well, because he figured this is the safest way. This is the less painful way. It's all about what's less painful. So the goal, again, is not to overcome fear, but really disengage the instinctive reaction to react. The instinctive reaction we have when pain is not imminent, because there is no pain coming when you're making calls. It's not real. So the best way to accomplish this is to understand this whole pain-pleasure principle. Some of you are familiar with this, the pain-pleasure principle, right? So you have to measure the fact that there is pain and there's pleasure, and your body is going to try to gravitate towards less pain. Always. Your mind, your instincts, always less pain. This is more painful, this is less painful, let's go this route. Sometimes you can make those decisions very rationally. You can sit there and figure it out, what's best for you, and you can talk to people and pray about it and counsel, and you can talk. Sometimes you just got to make a decision on the spot, within microsecond, right? So this is how we measure things currently. Go ahead.
And to this point is, human psychology tells us that humans in general are doing one of two things, right? They're either moving away from pain or moving towards pleasure, right? And so that's exactly what prospects are even doing too. When they decide that they don't want to, they say, "Oh, I'm going to wait 6 months to buy." That's a fear mechanism. It's basically the same thing. The same principle here is allowing this, buying a home reluctance, whatever you want to call it. It's like, oh, the market's going to change, or this is going to change, or the home prices are going to come down, or rates are going to come down, like trying to time the market. But the truth is, it's all fear disguised as like a indecision.
1,000%. Look, let me ask you a question, because this applies everywhere. And this is a perfect example before we go further. When a person responds to an ad that you guys run, they have to fill a form, right? A long form, we call it, or a funnel of some kind, correct?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
How many questions are typically on one of those things?
I think 12 to 14 is probably average.
12 to 14, right? Now you make it 12 to 14 because you don't want to make it 2 or 3, right? You'd be okay if it was just name, phone number, and email, but you put extra questions there for a reason, correct?
Correct.
And what's that reason?
To increase intent, to create more friction in the process so that people are more likely to be in the market to buy a home.
Right. So you want to weed out people, right? So here's what happens. How many of you have ever had this situation? Look, you can attempt to. This works even in them. Person sits down, fills out a form with 14 questions, pushes a button, and a minute later, you call them, and they don't answer. Right? It's this exact same thing.
Or they say, "I'm not interested," instantly.
I'm not interested. It's like you just filled out a form with 14 questions. So it's part of understanding that what this person is doing, all they're doing is when the phone rings, they are predisposed. They have a thought that, oh my God, a salesperson is going to talk to me. And everybody knows that talking to a salesperson is painful, uncomfortable. So I won't answer. Filling out the form was not uncomfortable. Picking up the phone and answering is uncomfortable. So everybody experiences that at any level. Now, here's the reality that we have a frame that we have to change. So let me show you the frame here. Let's talk about working out. If you go to the gym to work out, you most likely will experience pain and discomfort, whether it's waking up at 6 a.m, having to drive to the gym, having to energy, and it's painful and it hurts and you're out of breath and you're sweaty. And most people, a lot of people are going to find that painful and discomfort. The alternative with the reference that we have right now is that the opposite of that is I just won't go and I just won't feel any pain. You ever heard of the joke of no pain, right? It's no pain, no gain. No. Most of us are from the no pain perspective. Hey, I just won't go and the pain goes away. There's no pain. So gym, pain, no gym, no pain. If you go by this premise, you'll never make it to the gym. You'll never be consistent with it. You will never stick with it because this gives you a way out. You have two options. You can either experience pain or not experience pain. That's all we do. The same thing happens with our reluctance. We got to make our calls. I'm talking to people I coach. They have a list of 20 realtors they have to call and engage and talk about this or that. And it's like, I don't want to do that. The alternative is I just won't do it.
It's interesting you talk about that because I've talked to multiple agents and like just assuming because everybody talks about, hey, we make calls on Mondays and talk to a couple high producing realtors and they're like, I don't get calls on Mondays. Not really. They get a couple calls, but not like anything that everybody's talking about, like everybody's making all these cold calls, but people aren't actually making those cold calls.
We talked about this, right? I show you the survey that I did on Facebook on this. Did I tell you about that? So
no, I don't think so.
So I put a survey 3 weeks ago on Facebook and I said, on the realtor mastermind, there's like 10,000 realtors there. How many of you are getting calls from loan officers? And I put in 3 choices, 0, a few, or rarely, or whatever. 80% of them, they never get a single call. 80% of realtors do not get a single call. That's another one of those defense mechanisms that we tell ourselves, well, I'm just not going to call because everybody else is calling. They're not. Get that out of your system. They're not getting calls, right? So the reality is that. So before I move on, I want to make sure we're on this same page. You only have one frame right now. It's either you experience pain or you don't. So you're always going to choose the no pain. So calling realtors or not calling them.
And I had a comment here. Bob, is okay. You sent this to me directly, Bob, but I'm assuming you meant to just do it to everybody. Is that okay if I read out your message here? Yeah. Okay, cool. So Bob put in here cool. I just wasn't sure. I saw you sent it directly to me. I just want to make sure before I just said it. So he basically said, my fear is from embarrassment when I was a kid being savages by my friends that made fun of my intelligence. Exactly. So a lot of it, like when we talk about that, right? A lot of our resistance comes from the mechanisms that have been created from our early childhood, right? Exactly. 9 to 13.
Yeah. And here's the thing though, that fear was already there, Bob. That instinct was already there. All your friends did, they reinforced it. So now you have a frame of reference. You go, see, I knew it. This is embarrassing. When in reality, if your friends would have not done that, you still would have had that fear because it's a fear of the unknown. It's a fear of being embarrassed, the fear of what they're going to think, what they're going to say. That's the reason why we check ourselves and like, oh, am I going to be okay? Am I going to say the right thing? Right? Creates anxiety. So we're going to move to the other frame, to the other way to frame the same thing. Okay. So now you have a gym workout with pain and discomfort. We already established that. But now you're going to substitute the not going to the gym And instead of thinking, well, I'm just not going to suffer pain, you actually put a value to not going. And the value is lack of energy, shorter lifespan, become less attractive, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, painful golden years, my uncle who can barely get out of the car, he's only 62. I'd rather go to the gym. It changes immediately because you no longer are competing between pain versus no pain. Now you're saying pain versus more pain or less pain. Which one am I going to choose? So the gym workout is no longer the one you discard immediately. Now you start thinking, wait a minute, should I go? I know it's painful, but man, I don't want to look like my Uncle Joe, my Uncle Larry. I don't want what happened to my old man, my dad, dropped dead of a heart attack at age whatever. I want better quality of life. So as a result of it, I make different choices because now I have a different frame of reference. Now, this is basic stuff, guys. You've heard it before. I'm just putting it in the context of why we do what we do, why we struggle picking up that phone. This is the exact same thing. This is the reason why people never go to the gym. And then they go to the doctor one day and the doctor pulls them up and say, hey, man, you're 59 years old and I got some bad news. You have some cardiovascular disease that you're not going to be good. And all of a sudden you're sitting there thinking, wait a minute. I haven't seen my grandchild. My daughter hasn't walked down the aisle. I still got things to do. My wife and I are supposed to go to Europe. I'm not ready for this. The next thing you know, the guy's starting to walk a mile a day, 2 miles a day, 3 miles a day, start trimming down. And you said, well, because he's got more motivation. No, it's not the motivation. That motivation was always there. He should have been always motivated about his daughter walking down the aisle and the going in Europe and the retirement. That motivation is not new. What's new is that now we quantify the pain of not going to the gym and not working out and not taking care of ourselves. We just create a quantification that is more powerful than the alternative. So the reason why we struggle with the things that we struggle is because we need to put a price tag to the lack of the activity, to the reluctance. Most of us don't put a price tag on that. If you did, you would be on the phone. You would be all over this thing. You just have not put a price tag. Sorry, I'm going to be very blunt today. I told you it was going to be a bold training, but it is. So, gym workout, pain level 6. Not going to the gym, 0. I'll take 0. Second example, gym workout, pain level 6. Getting all this happened to me. That's a 10. I don't want that. So now you make a different choice.
Caesar just said, I captured a note for myself around that note. Think of what you will lose if you don't overcome my mental-based fear.
Right. Just, you got to quantify it. You got to quantify it. Because when you quantify the alternative, then it becomes real to you. I'm going to tell you, I'm right in the middle of it, man. I am from a family of diabetics. I eat very poorly if I let myself do that. But you know what? The motivation of all these things that I have going on in my life, that's not doing it. Let me tell you what does it. So I literally have to sit there and think, what happens if I drop dead in the next couple of years? What happens to my wife? You know, my daughter's getting married here soon. My son is expecting the first baby. I'm going to have my first grandchild. I finally have built a business that I can be proud of, that I can. And I got all these things going. Like, I have to put a price tag on that. So guess what? 4 days a week, 5 a.m., on my way, on my way to the gym to take that boot class. I walk out of there, man, I feel like $1 million. But the 2 hours prior to that, the getting there, the waking up, I sit in my bed every day and I bargain. And I bargain with myself. If I should not go, why should I not go? And I have to sometimes remind myself of the price I have to pay. So we find the motivation, understanding that not going to the gym is going to cause much more pain than actually showing up for an hour. The same thing happens with that reluctance to perform in other areas. We lack putting a price tag on these things. Now, we already established that a reluctance is just fear, right? It's a defense mechanism, a scheme against the incoming pain. Mind you, the gym is painful. Making phone calls, that's false pain. That's like false discomfort. Getting in touch with, returning calls from the leads, blocking our time, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our business. It's all false. Something is telling us to just not do this, that there's a better alternative, which is to not do it and then just go home and not deal with it till tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow it'll be better. So the truth is that our most powerful weapon against reluctance is the strategic understanding of the cost of that pain, of enduring that pain if we don't take the action on something. So that's our weapon, is we have to understand the cost. What is the cost of that pain? Of not doing it? What is the cost of not making realtor calls? What is the real cost of not calling and engaging the leads? Well, you're probably thinking, well, zero, doesn't cost me anything. I just don't do it. Oh, you're giving up something. What is the real cost of not engaging and nurturing social media? And like every week when I'm like, it's time for me to record content and I know I'm going to have to sit there and do 29, 30 videos, if I don't do it, what's the price? What is the real cost of not taking action on specific actions that I know that I need to take? Whatever that is. Obviously, this one's on top are the importance, right? Not calling the leads, not engaging with the leads, not making the calls to the realtors. What is the real cost of not engaging, nurturing our social media? Not making that a priority.
I think there's,
if you do not take time to establish that cost, you're going to be in trouble. Go ahead, Luke.
There's different types of costs as well, right? We can think about this from the perspective of like the cost of the actual like money, like what it's taking you to what money are you losing out on? What money are you investing and not getting an ROI on? But then also like, what are the other things that you want to do with it, right? Like I think as loan officers, like you have this massive opportunity to help consumers, achieve the American dream, right? Like you're lessening your impact on the community that you serve and helping people, get into homes and helping them, create wealth for their families and second, third, fourth generations down the road. And I don't know if that's not how you look at it, it is what it is, but I see mortgage as a vehicle that most other industries don't have the capacity to have that amount of impact over someone's wealth and living situation and things like that, right? So that's another side of things that you can think about as well.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm going to tell you, I think that part of the challenge is we don't take the time to analyze this. I am very fortunate that I get to spend time in coaching some loan officers, right? And one of the very first things we do is I ask them, I said, okay, where do you want to see your business? And then like a common answer would say, well, I want to go from funding 4 loans. I want to start doing like 7 or 8. And then I go, well, why? And I go, well, because I want to make more money. But why? Well, because I got to get to the bottom of it, because I know that in 90 days or in 60 days, I'm going to have to come back and remind them of why, when they're not doing the things that they told me they wanted to do. They told me they wanted to do those things. They pay me money to hold them accountable to it. So I got to go back and tell them, hey, you told me that you don't want to lose your house. You told me that you want your wife to stop working and that you want your wife to stay at home. And this is what you're giving up every time you choose not to make those calls and engage. What are you giving up? So what is the real cost of doing all these things, right? And I think we need to quantify that. Not making my realtor calls to create new partnerships will cost me the following. I'm using that as an example. It can be the leads or it can be whatever. So this is one example. If I don't make my calls, I'm going to have basically no realtor referral leads. We know that we want those if we can get them. We can survive without them, but if we can get them, why not, right? What if I can get 2 extra loans? Well, if I don't make my calls and I don't get those 2 extra loans, that's going to cost me anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000 per month. I lose market share in my community to other loan officers who are making the calls. So I start putting a quantification on this. I'm just using this as a personal example. Go ahead.
Well, let's talk about, you're talking about the $6,000 to $10,000, right? But is it $6,000 to $10,000? Like, because maybe it's more like $60,000 or whatever. Like, how many referrals are you going to get from that person? How many lifetime transactions are these people going to do?
Sure.
right? So
I'm just talking
that
like,
goes beyond just the first order of consequences,
oh
which is
yeah,
the very
and
first
we'll
commission.
wait till you see next page. But I'm just talking about like, hey, if I can make all these calls that you told me that you were willing to make and you were willing to engage in this, the moment you decide not to do that, then you have to account for the cost of that. So that's 2 extra loans that you're not getting. That's loss of market share to someone else. Man, you're in the market. You're in a market with one of those loan officers that is making calls. Good luck. You know, I feel bad for the guys in my market because I make the calls. You know, everybody knows who I am around here. I call them. I call. You know, and I engage with them. And I ask them about their open houses. And I ask them about, hey, what can I do for you? And hey, how are you helping the heroes? You know? So I know the cost. Not making those calls. 70, 120,000 a year. Not making that money. What is that going to have as a consequence? So yeah, now you just gave up the two loans. Okay, well, you gave up the 2 loans. That's anywhere between 70 and 120. So what does that do? Well, there goes. Vacations, more stress over money. Arguments with the spouse. How many of you are having arguments with your spouse over money right now as we speak? You don't have to answer. No retirement savings, no emergency funds, having to say no to things that my family needs or wants. Yeah, we're talking about money. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. There's more to it. But right now, let's just talk about money. Maybe worry about the fact that you're not going to have extra savings. What if an event happens, an emergency happens? Stress over money. That can cause you physical effects, health issues. I call my daughter and say, well, yeah, I know you want to get married, but we're going to have to do backyard in a taco truck because I don't want to make calls. I'm not going to do that. Right? I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's what I'm saying no to. I'm saying no to all of those things. So now I quantify something that before I didn't even think about. It's like, hey, I'll just call tomorrow. I'll figure it out later. Maybe I can text them instead of calling them. We all know how that goes. So some actionable steps. Identify the top 5 areas in your business, in your personal life, where you experience the most reluctance. And remember, reluctance is a big word. It can be, like we said, going to the gym. It can be making the calls. It can be calling the leads, calling the realtors, stopping by on Saturdays to the open houses for 2 or 3 hours in the morning, as opposed to going to the driving range, Enrique. Be very specific and bold.
It's funny you brought that up.
What was that?
I just called Marissa like 30 minutes before this call, and I said, "Why am I being reluctant to make these videos? I make tons of videos all the time, and yet I still am reluctant to make videos and content." And so it's something that now I'm over here thinking about call reluctance. But yeah, this is the same thing even with content reluctance. Why are we not making more videos? Why are we not showing our personalities?
Yeah, we're going to answer some of these questions in a second, but let me go through these actionable steps. Identifying the top 5 areas in your business and personal life where you have the most reluctance. Be bold. Be honest with yourself. This exercise is about trying to do something with your instincts that are so ingrained that you're going to have to be very bold about this. For each one of those areas, identify what is the ideal performance if you did not have reluctance. So for Luke, it would be, well, you know what? I would be doing 5 extra videos a day or 15 videos. If I didn't have the reluctance, this is what would it look like. So you have to establish, what does it look like if I don't have the reluctance? So then you can identify that with your reluctance, you're not getting the same result. But you have to identify the areas and then the ideal performance. Once you know the ideal performance, you have to identify with a number 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, how painful or uncomfortable it is to take action in this area. I'm going to tell you something. I've talked to people and I asked them, I said, how difficult is it for you to make phone calls to realtors on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being very painful? They go, 10. Like, really? 10? Breaking a leg is a 10. Oh no, calling realtors is a 10 for this person in his brain, right? So we have to identify that. There's a number there that's keeping you from making those calls. And faster you identify that number, the better. So identify the number 1 to 10 being worse, how painful or uncomfortable it is to take action in this area. So if you're talking about making calls, if you're talking about going to the gym, if you're talking about taking each day for self-care, if you're talking about calling the leads, come up with a number and be honest about it. And of course, now you have to make a list of all the things that you will or may experience if you don't take that action. So you're going to have to make your pain list. We call it the pain list, right? It's a very specific list. What are you giving up? What are some of the things that you're going to have to give up if you don't accomplish some of those things? So this is important because now you're going to quantify that pain. I did it earlier for you with an example that I just pulled out of my rabbit hat here, a rabbit that I pulled out of my hat. But here I want you to actually come up with the real thing, right? If you're struggling with your health, if you're not healthy enough because you're not making the right choices, don't say, well, I'm just going to be sick. No. What does that mean? What's going to happen to your wife? What's going to happen to your husband? What's going to happen to your kids? What's going to happen to your legacy? What's all those things? You have to quantify that. Be bold. Don't be afraid. Think of the worst case scenario. And then you're going to be able to see the picture. So this exercise will clearly help you understand the relationship between taking action and not taking action. The idea we have right now that is either pain or no pain, it's false. Going to the gym or not going to the gym is about pain or no pain. It's not. It's about all the things that happen to you when you choose not to take that action. I mean, we signed up for these things because we want change. And we got to be able to pay the price. It's that simple. It is possible that you're not taking action on your commitments, goals, desires, objectives, only because you don't account for the cost of not taking such action. That's the reason why sometimes we don't take the action. We don't account for the cost. Because if you saw how expensive it is, you would probably do it. Right? It's like when they tell you, well, you're going to have to change this in your vehicle. You're going to have to change it. It's a $200 fix. And you go, well, I don't know if I want to do that. If you don't do that, the engine's going to blow up. Okay, do it. Because if you don't do it, the engine blows up and now it's 10 grand or 15 grand. So it's like, okay, do it. Because it's all pain and avoiding that pain. So make a list that you can post near your computer or your workstation that identifies the consequences of your reluctance. So be bold about that. Make that list. Make it, you have those vision boards. I like the vision boards because they remind you that you have things to accomplish, a new home, vacations, retirement, things you want to do with your life spouse. But don't look at that vision board as a motivation to do it. Look at that vision board as what am I giving up when I decide to go fool around with Facebook instead of making my calls and taking care of my business? What am I giving up? If you're bold enough, actually make a reverse vision board. Put all the things that you don't want in your life and put them in front of you to remind you, this is what you get when you quit. This is what you get when you don't go for it. It's not a fun conversation.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. Not funny, but I guess you brought up earlier this year about goals and values and how those things, like if those things don't align, you're never gonna follow through either. So I think that comes into it as well. It's like what is it that you actually want out of life as well? And I think so many times people want this external thing of like, I want to close 20 loans a month. It's like, but do you really want to close 20 loans a month? Like, is that what you want, or is that just what you think you should do because that's what, I don't know, XYZ person told you should want, or what, the top producers are doing, right? Maybe closing 3 loans a month is perfect for you, and that's where you want to be at. And that's why sometimes you're out of alignment with the goals that you set for yourself, right? And again, maybe it is that you want those things, but I think also having that conversation with yourself is a huge way to understand, is this what I actually want? And if it is, great, but you're going to have to sacrifice to hit those things.
Yeah. So I want to read some of the comments, but let me just put this last point here. Do not feed your reluctance the favorite meal of reluctance is denial and lack of awareness. And I'm being serious about it. If you are in denial about what it's going to cost you not to take action, if you're in denial about not having that awareness, you are feeding your reluctance even more because you're just turning the other way. You need to understand the cost and make a decision not to pay that expense. It's a decision you have to make. It's too expensive for me not to do this.
So I have a question for you, Enrique.
Yes.
How many real estate agents do you call weekly, monthly, whatever? Like, are you calling new ones every week? Are you calling old ones every week?
So I have an advantage that I'm in a town where I've been here 20 years, and I have a pretty decent sized database where everybody that I talk to is pretty much someone I've been connected with. So it's really rare for me that I have to step out and call people, right? There's also a big portion of realtors in my town that do the upper 2 to 3 million cash stuff, that I don't necessarily want to pursue. Is not my market. So most of the people that I talk to are warmer for me, but I call anybody between 20 and 25 agents a week, right? And most of my conversations are based on checking in with them. I notice you have an open house. Hey, I wanted to, like, all week, I've been talking all week and I have about another 20 calls to make. I'm talking about the new California program that is coming out, and I'm calling, and I'm calling in person. And if they don't answer, I'll send them a text. Hey, can you call me back? I need to tell you something. It's like, so I do make a lot of calls in terms of that, but I'm fortunate that I don't have to call and introduce myself and say, hey, how are you? And can I, it's like, I had to do that in the past. I used to do
but this is 20 years.
Weekends.
This is 20 years of crushing reluctance. So, I mean,
exactly.
That's
believe me,
benefit.
I still sit there and I go, man, I don't want to talk to these jackasses.
Well,
that's what goes through my head. I'm sorry. That's what goes through my head sometimes.
But how many loan officers have been on, in business for 20 years and aren't making 25 calls to their real estate agents every single week, right? Even if they are warm.
I tell you, I stopped for a while, and it cost me dearly. This is about 6 or 7 years ago. And I'm going to tell you something. I thought I had already earned the right not to make those calls. And I was wrong. I was wrong. Let me tell you, there's people out here, man. I got some retail lenders here that are tough. I mean, they got agreements, the paper play, and I got money for you to buy leads, Zillow, this and that, man. They'll take my most loyal people because money talks, right? So I had to be on the phone talking, educating, tomorrow I am actually calling in the morning because I have a webinar at 1:30 to talk about the California program, and I'm going to call as many as I can. But I'm not afraid to call, right? But again, I'll say this in fairness, these are people that most of them know who I am, and they deal with me, right? They don't necessarily blow me off. But I still got to do those things, right? Still got to do the exercise. So feeding that reluctance with lack of awareness is not good. So that's that. Let's talk about some of the things that people are saying, so we can talk about that. So we are wired to avoid, not to gain. That is so true. It's a loss aversion, right? And that's exactly the reason why we react the way we do. So Jack is completely right. Our instinct is to avoid, to not, to go, to do something else, right? So it says, instead of paying attention to the pain, we want to avoid it. Think like Caesar's note. This about avoiding the long-term pain from avoiding the gym. In this example, we can continue to think the same way, but it will yield the opposite result. Yes. So Ben says, it may be just an excuse, but having a clunky CRM, yeah, it's an excuse. Creating a simple call process or even outside of an office CRM has been key for me. I get that. Obviously, having the technology is phenomenal, right? I'm transitioning to a new CRM right now because I think it's going to make it easier, but it ain't going to replace me making those calls. I can tell you a lot of people. CRM? I'm moving to Bonzo. Bonzo. Mostly, it's built for brokers, mostly. So they're heavy on brokers, but there's a lot of retail loan officers that use it as well. It's a scary technology because it's actually going to probably enable people to even have more call reluctance. It has drop voicemails and auto text and auto video and SMS video and SMS text and all that stuff. So it's like, we don't need necessarily more technology. What I need is just to make my calls and then use this as a backup. In fact, I was talking to Cesar about it. All these emails and text messages and voicemails is the follow-up backup to making the calls and being engaged. For me, Alicia is one of my loan officers. The call is not the problem. The problem is the follow-up. The same thing applies, right? Obviously, following up. I personally, a lot of people are going to think the follow-up is easier. My suggestion is you just got to schedule those follow-ups, and that way you got to book time for follow-ups, right? So Mondays, Tuesdays is follow-up day. I see how creating pros and cons lists for calling can be huge. The pros outweigh the cons for me. Ben is doing it right. He's doing the exact same thing I just described, bro. Why call versus not call, right? You got to put a price to it, and that's what he did, or our family dies, or your family dies. Bonzo, Bonzo, Bonzo. There you go. Second time I've heard Bonzo. You're going to hear about it a lot. They're onboarding they're onboarding like 300 brokers a week, they told me right now. So, what else?
We can do, I was just going to say, we can do, depending on what you're looking to do, we can kind of customize the CRM that's provided with the leads as well.
Yeah.
So that's something that you can, if you have any questions on that, just definitely reach out to us and we can figure out a way to maybe make it work. So there's not an additional thing that you have. Yeah. Any other questions or anything else? Comments, anything that anybody has for us, for Enrique? I think we're at the top of the hour. So
yeah. So, it's just encouragement. I want to give encouragement, to just step up and account for the cost of your activity versus your inactivity.
Yeah, it seems so like simple and fundamental, but at the same time, like it's exactly what we all deal with. We all create distractions around like, oh, well, I just got this email, so I got to handle this real quick. Oh, I just got this. All of a sudden, the hour that you blocked off for making calls isn't, we don't do that thing. And so, yeah, that's all a form of procrastination or avoidance or call reluctance or whatever type of reluctance it is, right?
Yeah, it's a proven fact. I've had some mentors in the past that have taught me, and I don't do it, but they preach the idea of really disconnecting. I can tell you, if you talk to some of the top coaches, they will share with you, don't make the calls on your phone. Take your phone and turn it off, or go put it somewhere else in the office. Put it in a different room and use your landline if you have one. Why do they suggest that? Well, because we know what we do with a stupid phone. We get distracted, right? Put a sign outside your door. There's a sign outside my door right now that says "Do not interrupt." Right? So, it's just a lot of stuff. Great stuff, Enrique. Just like that Pekin lemon pepper. Oh my God, I love that Pekin lemon pepper, Rudy. Thanks for the shout out. But yeah, that's all I got for you. If you want to reach out to me, you know where to find me. We love helping. We love sharing. And
Ben, looks like Ben had a question here.
Yeah,
see that content of cold call or quantity?
I don't understand the question.
I think he might be asking like how many times should be cold calling, or what's the quantity? It sounds like, or what are you talking about in the? I don't know. Maybe
yeah. So today we didn't really get into what is it really that we should be doing, because we've had plenty of webinars for that. I think today was mostly about, if you're struggling with making the calls, why? And I don't believe that you're struggling because of content. I really don't. I don't think you're struggling because you don't have good equipment, or you don't have a good CRM, or you don't have this, or you don't have that. You're struggling because something's telling you, don't make those calls. Go do something else instead. All I'm telling you is substitute that and quantify what you're giving up, what you're leaving at the table, right? And that's what it is. So in this particular case, yes, obviously there are going to be times when you're going to make calls about content. I check in with people, and I always come up with a reason to call. I do a lot of stuff for my agents. I do flyers, I do videos, I do this, I do that. I always have some new program coming up, right? We all do, like, oh, hey, did you know that you can do loans with bank statements? 90% of the realtors are going to go, what? Really? We're doing that now. Yeah, stated income. We have that. So it's about really just making the decision to make the calls.
Well, and I think, yeah, in addition to that, it's also sitting down and like, what is it that you do better than everybody else? Or what is it that you can do to bring value to people as well? And I think that removes that hesitation of like, well, what should I say? Or what should I do? Or what?
I agree.
So I do think that like, that's, yes, kind of still an excuse, but it's kind of also valid because like, you just continue to make that, well, I don't know what I do, or I don't know what to say. Or it's like, well, just freaking write a script, use the script, test, reiterate, whatever, right? Like just make changes, because at some point, like you just have to take that action. But again, just sitting down saying, what do I do better than everybody else? How can I bring value? Why
Yeah.
would a realtor work with me versus the other person? Because everybody else is saying the same thing. They're all saying that they have good rates. They're all saying they pick up the phone. They're all saying that they're all saying everything everybody else is saying. So what is it that you do better or different, or, or how can you frame it in a way that shows that it looks different?
Right. Well,
Anyway.
Remember, there's a lot of new people here. So maybe a reminder, there's a recording that we did where we talked about bringing value to realtors on those phone calls. So we have an hour of how to bring value to realtors. And it's not necessarily just calling and say, hey, you have good rates and good turn times and you're available on weekends. In fact, for an hour, we talk about all the different things that we do, whether it's calling them about helping them with their open house or telling them about the Shining Star Hero program. So we have a recording for that. If you have any questions on that, just reach out and what is the best way for them to find that recording?
Support at Loans on Demand.
There you go. So just say, hey, where's the recording that blah, 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 I think we call it bringing value to realtors. That's the name of the workshop. So we already covered a lot of those topics. What we wanted to do today is bring light as to why is it that having all these great tools still blocking us from succeeding, right? What is it that we're letting that? I mean, many of you are getting leads and you're not following up. And you got to sit there and wonder, well, why? Right? There's a reason for it. And we talked about it today. So I feel good about the fact that we got to unmask some of those concerns and some of the things that maybe you already knew all this, but it's just good to be refreshed that, hey, you know what? There's a little person in my brain telling me to not do this. And you got to figure out a way to overcome that. And it's all about creating value in your mind, putting a quantity to the cost of not doing things. So very good. Well, I appreciate everybody being here. What else? Content? Anything else? Nope.
I don't think so. I think we're good. Thank you, everybody.
That's it. All right. And for those who are not part of Loans on Demand, if you want to find out more about it, reach out to Luke or put your email address on the chat box and somebody will contact you and tell you more about it.